Okay, everybody, Dennis Wood here for, unfortunately, a little bit of a workshop on cooling systems, EV cooling systems. If you're flushing your cooling system, this video will be useful because we kind of go over how you would do that, how you would drain it. I talk about this a little bit later, but I highly, just based on everything I've seen and work with even with ICE cars these days with aluminum heads and aluminum blocks, I think 5 years is probably the longest you should take coolant. And that applies here. You've got a power delivery unit, you have the inverter, and you have a motor down here that are being cooled by this coolant that's in this tank and in the rad. But public service announcement, this cap is only running, unlike most ICE cars, if you've been working on them for a while and you want to go pressure test this, you just kind of dial in 15 PSI because that's kind of what most ICE cars use. EVs have different cooling systems. The LEAF does not have a system for the battery. So I would not just guess at the coolant. I'm using the Nissan Blue 2, I think it's called. But it's Blue 2 that you want. This is an OEM coolant from one of the parts stores. You'll see in this video the coolant is green because I put in some UV dye and I have a black light. Originally, this was a very slow leak and I couldn't actually find it. So the nice thing about putting a UV dye into your coolant is if you have a leak and it's on the ground, especially in sunlight, people will tell you. Like, in fact, my father-in-law called and said, "Hey, there's a puddle." My wife was driving the car. "There's a puddle in our driveway coming from your car and it's green." And I'm like, okay, that's coolant. So we went from a leak that was pretty much impossible to detect to one that it was like not spewing, but leaking significantly, so that I stopped driving the car. 5 PSI is all the system uses. You don't want to start pumping in more because you could damage. But the way that this particular kit, this is just a kit from Amazon. I can put a link up in the description. Comes with a couple of different caps like this one and some fittings. This kit comes with a vacuum purge, which I have used before on the vehicle, and we'll go over that on the fill. Nissan doesn't necessarily call for a vacuum purge, so you just want to be careful you're not pulling down unusual pressure, maybe the equivalent of 5 PSI. But to pressure test the system, kind of hard to beat one of these testers. They're not that expensive. And if you're working on vehicles at all, in fact, I mean, I don't know what the cost of this job is at the dealer, but I mean, if the rad's $300 or $400 and you got to take the front clip off, so you're probably into it for $1,200 or something. But the first step is to put the cap on and make sure it's fully on. And then this quick release goes on. There's a little pressure release right there. And I've got the coolant kind of jumped ahead, but I've already drained the coolant out. And you're going to see here, I'm just going to put 5 PSI in there. We'll pump her up. And you'll see that needle is dropping pretty quick. So this rad has failed. And it went from a small leak to that. I should mention that with the coolant out of the system, the fluid out of the system, it's a lot easier for air to go through a hole than fluid. So even testing it with fluid in it, you're not going to see nearly that drop. In fact, you might have to leave it on for 20 minutes. I was seeing a drop, but after 30 minutes, it was hardly anything, and I couldn't see any coolant. So now that I've added the UV dye to the system, and I'm using the black light, you can see there's coolant everywhere down there in the rad area. So I was a little worried it was the pump. The pump is the electric pump, which is right down here. It's kind of at the bottom of the vehicle. Is not a cheap part to replace, not a hard part to replace. It's a couple bolts and a connector. I'd much rather do that than the rad, honestly. I kind of miss the good old days when a rad was 2 bolts and you could literally lift it out of the vehicle. This is not that. So you'll see as we get on with this video. That's the electrical pump right there. A little hard to see with all the flaring going on here, but and there really isn't any sign, which is probably a good thing. There's just a bit, you can see a bit fluorescing on it, just probably from spillage from the top, but it's not leaking. It's definitely the rad. Again, if we look here, it's like, yeah, there's like a, let's see if we can get a better view here. Yeah, right there. I think both end tanks are leaking, so that is our problem. Now we got to fix it. This is the corner of the car, obviously for reference, but the drain is right. There's this kind of large hole here, and it's just hiding. Let's see if we can get a look at it here. It's just hiding up in there. Right there, you can just see the head of it. It's a standard Phillips head. Just a plastic screw though. So you really do have to be There we go, there's a good view of it. You really do have to be very careful. You're just gonna unscrew that to drain. And we're gonna go ahead and do that. As promised, we're gonna go in with our Phillips and we'll just find that. And obviously when removing this, you wanna be pretty darn careful not to damage the threads. And you can see, down comes the coolant. We're just gonna pull this plug right out, which, there it is, just a little guy. Plastic with an O-ring, super easy to damage those threads. Little O-ring there, you just gotta be careful that it's not even a bad idea to throw a new one on if you have it. And you can see that this is, I don't know if you can see that, but it's actually split. So it's designed so you don't actually have to fully remove it. You gotta be careful putting it back in. And I'm gonna let this drain, and then we're gonna apply some pressure again to the system and you'll actually hear the leak. Let her drain out. This is obviously coming out green. The OEM fluid, which I'm using, the Nissan Blue 2, it's called. This thing is what I'm using. You can go get it from Nissan. I'm just getting, it's pre-mixed, supposedly rated for 250,000 kilometers, which I think is a joke. The more I learn about these vehicles, especially EVs, even our Toyota Highlander, I would say 5 years. I'm not sure what, I think Nissan says 10. With all the motor, the inverter, the power delivery unit, the PDU that gets cooled by this fluid, it really makes sense to change this out every 5 years. You can see how easy it is. This tray comes off. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5. There'll probably be 10 millimeter. I had to replace these bolts. I lost a couple. And then there's just some push pins here. And that tray, that underbody tray, comes off quite easily. In fact, while we're training, you're gonna have a couple of these screws and a couple of these little clips left over at the end of it. I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 clips and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts. So pretty easy to take this down. These clips, you just, I have a little pry tool, but you just pry this up and the whole pin will drop out. It's super easy. I've actually had all the trays removed. It's not a big deal. Like for corrosion, you can see the car is all black under here. It's black because I've sprayed it with Noxidol 300 because these things will rust, but you do need to touch up the product. I'm just actually looking at it, looks pretty good. But these A arms I'll touch up as part of my spring tune-up. Not looking forward to this rad job, but we'll take some more videos as we do it.